With another video, and this is sort of another triple review video. I'm going to talk about 3 films here, give you my thoughts on each one. And this is this first one we're going to talk about is Running Scared, 2006 film starring Paul Walker and directed by Wayne Kramer. And this is for a movie, TV show, and video game fan if you're watching. But this is a really good film here. Again, directed by Wayne Kramer. This guy also directed The Cooler, which I haven't seen, but I do have in my collection somewhere. He also directed Pawn Shop Chronicles, another film that I've heard about but haven't seen. He also wrote Mindhunters. That's a solid movie. But Paul Walker stars in this film, and I really miss Paul Walker. While I never really got that big into the Fast and Furious franchise, but Paul Walker was a good actor. I remember, when it happened, back in 2013, his death, was very tragic. And, like I said, he was a very good actor. I wish the guy was still with us, but his performance in this film here is really good. Very intense performance from Paul Walker. But the plot real quick, so, Paul Walker's character is sort of a mob hand, and he finds his life turned inside out when a weapon he's in charge of concealing goes missing. And you have these mafia families and these crooked cops that are watching his every move. And Joey, played by Paul Walker, he's set out on a bloody pursuit of getting this weapon back, and he has to maneuver his way through a web of creeps and criminals, trying to get this gun back and make it back home to his family. And that's the plot here to this movie. And like I said, Paul Walker is really good in the film. It's a very suspenseful. The direction here is I really love the direction by Wayne Kramer. Now, like I said, I haven't seen his other stuff, but I wonder what this director would have done with the Punisher movie. And it's funny that I thought about that watching throughout this movie, because apparently Thomas Jane was up for this role for Paul Walker's part. I read that in the trivia somewhere that Thomas Jane was considered, and I'm like, that would have been really cool. I like Paul Walker, but Thomas Jane in this would have been like a nice little follow up to the Punisher, even though it wouldn't be a Punisher sequel, but kind of in the spirit of the Punisher, because the way this movie is filmed and directed, there's a lot of great editing too. Some cool visual shots. I don't know, just the way that Wayne Kramer and the editor, the way the film was made and directed, I really give a lot of credit to Wayne Kramer. It's very riveting direction. Again, with some very stylish. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. It's very stylish in its direction, and you got some great shots in there. And like I said, Paul Walker's really good. Supporting cast, you have Chaz Palminteri, and he's been in other stuff. But he was good in the film. Vera Farmiga, and I know she was in the Conjuring. She's good here. You have Cameron Bright. He plays the main kid in the film. He did fine. And so, the supporting cast, again, everybody does a good job with the supporting cast. The film is 2 hours, but it moves along pretty fast. Again, it's very stylish. I thought there's a lot of intense scenes in here. One that really comes to mind is, so there's this part in the film where you have this really creepy couple that kidnap the main boy in the film that has the weapon that Paul Walker is looking for. and this couple is, they're pedophiles. I mean, let's just say it, they're pedophiles. And I really like the scene where the wife of Paul Walker, she rescues the kid from this really creepy couple, and at the end of the scene, she kills them both. And I'm like, yeah, would have done the same thing. But that's just one, scene of the movie. They got towards the end of the film where they're in that hockey rink, and I forgot it was all shot in like this black light, where they're torturing Paul Walker. I thought those scenes were some of the best of the best parts of the film, where he's being tortured at the end. And I know I'm not really giving away a lot of stuff here. I'm not really going that in depth with this movie here. But it's a film that I think a lot of people, if you haven't seen, you definitely should check out. Running Scared. Again, Paul Walker puts on a really good performance. It's a very stylish film. Wayne Kramer's direction, it's top notch. And again, I keep going back, to what if Thomas Jane had starred in this film. And again, I take nothing away from Paul Walker, but I'm like, man, I really, if there was ever a Punisher 2, back in the day, I would have liked to have seen this guy take on a Punisher film, because I see the way, like the way he made this film just reminded me so much of a Punisher film. But yeah, it's a very gripping movie, very gripping film, very intense and suspenseful. And apparently when this film came out, it did not do well at all. Paul Walker, he was disheartened, disappointed by the box office with this film. And then when he got back home, Quentin Tarantino had left a message on his machine saying that, the film was really good. He praised his performance. And so he liked that, Tarantino loved the movie. So a little bit of a note there. All right, so going back to what I was saying for a second, I wrote this down about going back to Thomas Jane, but he had turned down the role because of scheduling conflicts. And I'm trying to think what at this time that he was working on that he couldn't do this movie. But so, yeah, Thomas Jane turned down the role because of scheduling. But, all in all, Running Scared is a really good film. Again, very gripping, very intense performance from Paul Walker, good supporting cast, well shot, well filmed, and it's a well-paced movie. There's a lot of really cool scenes. The ending, I liked the way the film ended. I thought it was going to end a certain way, and then it gave me threw me a swerve, and I really liked that. So I thought the ending was really cool. But yeah, so Running Scared is a really good film in my book. The next one here, I don't want to talk about, but we're going to talk about it. Max Payne. And yes, I do have this as part of a double pack with Hitman. Neither are good movies. But yeah, Max Payne here, Marky Mark, more like a pain in my ass. I never played the Max Payne video game, so I'm out of the loop when it comes to the story, the characters, the character of Max Payne. But yeah, right. So the back of this DVD says, Mark Wahlberg delivers an explosive performance in this action-packed thriller. Explosive? Yeah, I mean, after watching this, you probably get explosive diarrhea, from watching Marky Mark in the movie. But this film was awful. Yeah, Max Payne is just a very lame, forgettable movie. I mean, Mark Wahlberg is Max Payne. Again, even though I haven't really played much of the games, I don't know much about the character, but Mark Wahlberg was very miscast and just very awful and awkward in the role. Directed by John Moore, and right there, your flags go up. John Moore, this guy, I know he directed Behind Enemy Lines, but he also directed the Omen remake and A Good Day to Die Hard. This guy is a terrible director, and apparently Mark Wahlberg said that working with John Moore, he's one of his favorite directors, or he's one of the best he's worked with. And I'm like, Marky Mark, come on. John Moore is one of the best directors you worked with. Give me a break. John Moore is a hack. John Moore, he can't direct. And where do you start with this movie? I'm not going to really get into the plot that much. If you kind of know the story. If you're familiar with Max Payne, you know the story. But if there's any positives with this movie here, maybe Beau Bridges. You have some familiar faces here in the film, like Mila Kunis, Beau Bridges, Chris O'Donnell in a small part, Donald Logue in a small part. But even with some of those familiar faces, they can't save this movie. Chris O'Donnell's in here, but it's really a nothing role. Donald Logue is in here for a little bit, then gets killed. And I like Donald Logue. He was in The Patriot, Mel Gibson. He's been in other stuff. Beau Bridges, which you find out later, he's one of the villains. I don't care about spoiling that. But yeah, it's funny that in the film, his character's name is BB. I'm like, is this trying to be a joke? Is this a joke? Are they doing this on purpose? Beau Bridges, BB. Yeah, I'd rather take a BB to the nuts than watch Max Payne again. I'd rather take, a BB pellet to my asshole. But yeah, this movie. Yeah, Beau Bridges. He's the only really actor that to me is outshining Marky Mark, and Ludacris is in the movie, but as a cop, and you don't buy it. Mila Kunis, I didn't care for in the movie. The pacing, okay, maybe the film is an hour and a half, so it's not 2 hours. Could you really call that a positive? I guess that it's not 2 hours, it's an hour and a half. So if there's one thing that, if I have to give this film any sort of credit or positive, maybe Beau Bridges. But even then, he's drowning in a very shitty movie and a very shitty script, and led by Marky Mark and his awkward performance and his awful, acting. And there's bad CG in here. And I'm not familiar, again, I say this because in the film, you have these, demon creatures, these angel or demon creatures that are haunting certain characters, and I don't know, are they part of the Max Payne video games? Again, that's me not knowing, but even then, the CGI was pretty bad when it comes to the creatures. Again, Beau Bridges, you find out, towards the end, he's one of our villains. He's out acting, everybody in here. Like Marky Mark, he's better than Marky Mark. Chris O'Donnell, again, he's in it for a little bit, and then he gets killed. Donald Logue is in it for a little bit, gets killed. Mila Kunis, who cares? The film, it just comes off cheap. I don't know what the budget was. Yeah, there's a commentary up here by director John Moore, so maybe he can give us some explanation. And again, Mark Wahlberg saying that John Moore is one of the best directors he's worked with. Come on. Come on, Mark. And Mark, Mark Wahlberg, I mean, you don't really see him as much now. There was a time there where, for me, he just became overexposed. He, to be fair, there's like maybe 3 or 4 films where I don't mind him. But for the most part, he's just one of those actors that, to me, just got way overexposed. It's just Mark Wahlberg, Mark Wahlberg, was in every single film. It's like he made maybe 1 or 2 movies a year, and even then that was too much. It just seems like, after a while he was kind of, I don't know if you want to say just kept playing himself, but it just felt like it. It's like, okay, another Mark Wahlberg movie. And this is around that time. Now, I don't mind the other guys. I thought that was a fun movie. I've heard good things about Payne and Gain. Haven't seen it. I haven't seen Boogie Nights. But I did like Shooter. So in Four Brothers, I didn't mind. So it depends on the movie. But, again, for me, Mark Wahlberg, I just think that he's just one of those guys that just got really overexposed. Like, he became a go-to guy for me, or not to me, but, for Hollywood for a while. I'm like, I'm tired of Mark Wahlberg. Give me some other actor that, there's other actors out there besides Mark Wahlberg. I mean, come on. I mean, maybe that's part of it. That they were just getting Mark Wahlberg for every movie. And I'm like, give me somebody else. I'm tired of Mark Wahlberg. And, yeah, this film here, again, he's very awkward in, very awful. There's a part in the third act where he's like screaming in the sky or something, and you could probably find it on YouTube, and it's very, again, awful. But, again, Max Payne is just, it's a very forgettable, lame movie. And again, I'm not really commenting much on the video game series because I haven't played it. I don't know much about it. But I can safely assume they're better than this movie. I mean, they should have gotten the guy that voices Max Payne. And apparently he does appear in the film. But, yeah, Max Payne is just an awful film. And, yes, this is right here. I wrote it down in my notes. Mark Wahlberg has stated in interviews that John Moore is one of the best directors he's ever worked with. And Mark Wahlberg has worked with Tim Burton, Martin Scorsese, and Paul Thomas Anderson. John Moore also said that he tried to please fan requests as much as possible. And frequently. Yeah, okay. Whatever. Mark Wahlberg reportedly never played the video game as he didn't want to become addicted, and he felt the script connected him to the story enough. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe that's one of the film's problems, is, Mark Wahlberg, first off, he's miscast, and 2, you didn't do your research. So, you just, no wonder it's an awful film. I mean, John Moore definitely plays a hand in that because he can't direct. He's a terrible director, and for a very forgettable movie. This is the last film here we're going to talk about, Ernest Rides Again, for Shawn Little. And this was a fun movie. I mean, Ernest, I've always loved Ernest. Whether Ernest Saves Christmas, Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Scares Stupid, and this is the first time watch for me. And Ernest Rides Again, it's a fun, sort of a live-action cartoon. I mean, you got a lot of fun moments in the film. It's a very slapsticky movie, comedy. And it's lighthearted. Again, it's fun. I'm not going to sit here and say it's a perfect film or it's my favorite Ernest film. I would probably say that my favorite Ernest film is Ernest Saves Christmas or Ernest Scares Stupid. And this one here, it may not be up there with the top three, but again, I had some fun with this. A very zany, slapsticky. I don't know if you can use that. I don't know, is that a word? But there's a lot of, slapstick in this movie. It's kind of like a live action cartoon. But Jim Varney's good in the film. I don't have the film. I was able to watch it on Tubi. But, I miss Jim Varney a lot. He's very, especially in this movie, it's very animated. And that's why I keep going back to it. It's sort of like a, live action cartoon. I just really miss the guy. I miss his energy with the Ernest character. You got this professor in the film, the character that, they go on this hunt for this cannon. And once they find the cannon, there's a lot of, shenanigans throughout the movie. Like they would ride on top of this cannon that's going down the road. Well, the cannon they had, they found this old cannon underground. And, once they find the cannon, again, there's a lot of fun stuff that happens throughout the movie. Again, Jim Varney, very energetic in the film, very animated. And again, I know it's not everybody's favorite Ernest film, but it's a very lighthearted, fun movie. To me, it doesn't deserve a 4.7 on IMDb. That's just me. Again, I understand it's not Ernest Saves Ernest. I almost got two movies mixed up there. It's not Ernest Scares Stupid. It's not Ernest Saves Christmas or Ernest Goes to Camp. But again, I had some fun, lighthearted, silly time with this movie. And I mean, there's not a whole lot that I can say that, when it comes to this movie. Someday maybe I can talk more about the Ernest films and go a little bit more in depth. I mean, it was directed by John Cherry. John Cherry directed, quite a few of those Ernest movies, and I believe he's passed away. I think he just passed away not too long ago. And I mean, you got a couple of people in the cast that you may have seen before, recognize, like the villain. The villain is played by, I forgot his name. See, I should maybe look this up. Tom Butler. Tom Butler, he plays the villain here in the film, and you've seen this guy before. Dr. Mellon, who is played by Ron James in the film. And this is the 5th entry in the Ernest series. And I think it did make theaters, but I think this was, the last to be... so this was Ernest Rides Again. This was the last theatrical film of the Ernest character. And then all future movies would go direct to video. So, I mean, box office, I mean, it made, a little bit of change, but not much. And again, it's just a fun, sort of a treasure hunt movie. Treasure hunting with, Ernest. I mean, overall, I will say Ernest Rides Again. Again, it's a fun, lighthearted adventure with Ernest. Again, while not my favorite Ernest film, but, it's a decent, fun little movie in the series. And, it's a fun little adventure. And you got some fun stuff in there, and it's not a long movie at all. And I mean, I don't have a lot of nitpicks, but so that's it for this video here. Again, I wanted to talk about some films today, and thank you to movie, TV show, and video game fan. Thank you to Johnny, Jerry, and Shawn Little. Shout out to you guys out there, and I just want to say thank you for watching, and I'll be back soon.